Incorporated. Glad to have Rico McGee with us in studio today. Rico, welcome to No Static Radio and welcome to the right side. So our audience is just dying to hear about. Tell our audience a little, who is Rico McGee?
Well, Rico McGee is a graduate of Virginia Union University.
HBCU?
Yep, 2013. Came home. I was working at 92.3 The Fan for about 6 years, and I was also working at Channel 19 in between. Got laid off from The Fan due to the pandemic, and I got laid off in 2017 from 19 due to budget cuts and automation. You know how that goes. I was a production assistant helping write news stories, and for a long time, man, I was wondering, where am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? I wasn't exactly ready to go to a smaller market, so I said, you know what? I'm tired of begging for a seat at the table, so I just started my own thing.
Absolutely.
Good, that's how to do it.
Absolutely.
That's exactly how to do it. For those of you that are outside of Northeast Ohio, 92.3 The Fan is the FM sports station here in Cleveland. They have the broadcast rights. They share the broadcast rights to the Cleveland Browns along with AM 850, and Channel 19 is the local CBS affiliate here in Cleveland. So what inspired you? How did you get into broadcasting? What made you want to do that?
Actually, it was probably my senior year of high school. My guidance counselor, Mr. Robinson, rest in peace, he was talking with my father, was all in his office, and at this point I was a knucklehead. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So my father's like drilling into me, you gotta figure out something, you gotta figure out something. And Mr. Robinson suggested, you have a great radio voice, why don't you go into broadcasting? If you don't go anywhere else, at least try to go to Ohio Media School. So initially I was thinking about that, and then my aunt told me about Virginia Union, and coming out of high school, my grades weren't great, I'm gonna be honest. So I had to start off at Tri-C, get my grades up, and as I was actually able to apply to Virginia Union, I got accepted and joined their mass communications department. I was a mass comm major. And from there, I interned at iPower 92.1. That's the hip hop station down in Richmond, Virginia. And I also interned at WRIC Channel 8. That's the ABC affiliate. And when I graduated, I came home. I didn't get a job. I didn't get the job with 92.3 till about a year after I graduated. So I graduated in 2013, got the job in 2014, a little over a year later. And from there, I just was working at the Fan, and then I was able to apply to Channel 19. I got the job at 19 as a production assistant, so I was operating Chiron and teleprompter, and everything was all good up until I got laid off from everything, and now I'm just like, man, I'm not in my field. I'm tired of this. I'm just gonna start my own thing. I got back with a friend of mine named Mike Allen in 2020. We got back together because we hadn't seen each other in years, and he had just graduated from Ohio Media School. And he passed away in 2021. In about 2021, he passed away, a week before Christmas actually. And before he passed away, he left me his laptop. Said, "Yo, it's a MacBook Air." I'm like, "You sure you don't want me to give you no money for this?" He's like, "No, just take it. I'm about to get another laptop, and I'm about to, do my thing. So don't worry about paying me for it. This is yours. You can have it." So I said, okay. Well, when he passed away, I decided, you know what? He left me his laptop. I'm not gonna just not use it. So I conceived my show, The Sports Minute. And The Sports Minute is basically a 2 to 4, probably a 2 to 5 minute quick report and analysis. We don't want to take up nobody's time, and people's attention spans are very short. So it's basically a 2 to 5 minute, report and analysis of anything that's going on in sports for the day.
Now, is that local or just sports period?
That's just sports period.
Okay.
We talk, but we talk Browns, Cavaliers, Guardians. Now that I'm covering the Cleveland Charge, we're going to start talking NBA G League. We cover the Cleveland Crunch, and earlier, actually about a couple of months ago, somebody saw that I was doing. A good friend of mine, Romel Thorpe and Ronnie. They have a media company called the 216 Sports Network, and you can find them all on Facebook. You can Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we got together and we're making things happen.
Now, you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We have in studio with us media host Rico McGee. Rico, so when you were at 92.3, were you on the air then? Were you an on-air personality, or what did you do there?
No, I was a board operator. I was a board op for the Cleveland Browns tailgate show.
Okay, now ideally, when a person starts off in media, be it television or radio, and since you started off in radio, is that usually, I guess for lack of a better term, entry level where people kind of get their feet wet there? Because I've heard Emmett Golden, he's been a guest on this show before too, and when he was on, he talked about that's how he got started too, being a board op at the station where he's employed. Now he's, not only does he have a daily talk show, he's a co-host, but he's also national now on ESPN radio as well, and that's how he got his start. So I was just curious, is that the ground level, entry level?
Oh yeah, that's definitely the entry level. You're probably, when I first started, I started running the board at 7 a.m. Sunday morning, but I had to stay up all night. So my schedules would start off at 1 a.m. and I would just go in with my cup of coffee and basically what they call it, babysitting the board. You had to make sure nothing got knocked off air. You had to make sure all the commercials played when they were supposed to. You had to check off the commercial log, and that's your start.
Okay, so because at that time there wasn't local broadcasting. 92 is a CBS radio affiliate. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you did is while the national show was going on, you had to make sure that the local commercials, and that when you went to them, and you had to make sure that you, then when these commercials were done, make sure you were going back to the national broadcast.
Yes. I want to say around midnight is when everybody left the station. The board went into automation, so they would play all the national shows. So I forgot some of the names on the show.
Well, it was the JR, Sports Brief, and Amy Lawrence.
Yeah, Amy Lawrence. Yeah. Yep, all of them. They all were national shows. So
you all see, I need to go to bed at night.
No, hey, so the Amy Lawrences, all of those national shows, the local commercials were played each commercial break. So I would have to pay attention and monitor and make sure that all those commercials play, because what people don't understand genuinely is that it's the commercials that make the money for the radio stations, not the shows. Absolutely. It's the commercials.
Right.
These companies pay a fee for a spot on the show during commercial break, and if that ad doesn't play and you pay for it, that could be pretty bad.
Yeah, the station is going to be looking at, well, why didn't that ad play? And then they're going to be looking at the person who didn't play it. You're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We have guests in studio with us, Rico McGee. Rico, tell us about your Sports Minute. So is this like a podcast you're doing, or exactly what is it?
Yes, the Sports Minute is a 2 to 5 minute podcast where basically I just give my opinion on things going on in the sports world. So, for example, I give analysis, give predictions. Sometimes they right, sometimes they're wrong. But one of my favorite episodes, we also try to educate people too. So I did an episode on sports and mental health. Last year when the Rams and the Bengals played in the Super Bowl, you saw a lot of people rooting for the Rams and a lot of people rooting for the Bengals. And what I tried to do is get people to, understand that some people are just fans of the game so much, and when your team loses, you just go berserk. You get mad, you throw things, you act crazy, and I try to get people to understand. I brought a therapist on. Her name is McGee, and we basically just talked about how to handle when your team loses in a big game, in whether it be a championship game or an important regular season game or anything like that. So we try to educate people, number one. Number two, we give analysis on sports without tearing anybody down either. Because, a lot of athletes are very, it seems like athletes are very sensitive.
Yes.
And, you say something that may come off a little condescending or, a little downplaying of what they do, and, you're liable to catch backlash. But it's basically a 2 to 4 minute podcast of everything that's, we try to educate people. We try to give our best analysis from a different perspective that a lot of people may not look at it, a certain way, and that's what we do.
And I bet that broadcast with the sports psychologist had to be very interesting, because people really, and this is just my opinion, really take sport. And let me preface this by saying this: I love sports. Part of the same thing that we do on this program is that we talk sports. So, and I've always been a sports fan for as long as I know. But that being said, people tend to really take this thing too seriously, almost like life and death. There's a very funny, but then when you think about it, it's not that funny of a clip, and I don't know if you've seen it, but after the Browns went to Pittsburgh in 2020 and won the playoff game against the Steelers, there's a clip of this guy that was a Steelers fan that basically just lost his mind, and to the point where he had a huge, big screen TV, very expensive, and he just took it and threw it down and just beat the, and I'm like, dude, this is just a game. And you see, people in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago turning over the cars and all the vandalism and what have you. And this is when they lost. So you can imagine what would have happened if they won. Now, truth be told, in my own past, and I never went to that extreme, but I do remember in 1986 when the Browns were in the AFC Championship game, and I was at that game. That's the famous, or from a Browns fan standpoint, the infamous drive game. It did take me about a month to get over that loss. I had to finally say, Jeff, this is just a game, so get over it. But I would have liked to hear that. I bet that was a very interesting broadcast.
Yes, it was. And we try to, get people to understand, like, we all have to go to work tomorrow.
Exactly.
We all have to go to work tomorrow. We're not getting any part of these NFL players' money at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be coaches, football players, front office. It's the players, they're the ones that got to deal with it. We could be upset, but at the end of the day, we have to go to work tomorrow.
Well, when Jose Mesa blew Game 7 in 1997, my job didn't say to me, you know what, Jeff, I know you feel kind of bad about that, so you can stay home today. No, they expected me to be there, so you're right about that. So when you were coming up, who were some of the people that you looked up to in this, maybe not just the sports media, but media in general? Who were some of your role models?
That's a good question. Honestly, one of them was Donnie Simpson.
Yeah,
when I was a
BET.
little boy, I remember watching him on BET with the eyes, and I'm like, yo, he cool, man. I really like that guy. Donnie Simpson is one. I forgot his name, but they did a big story on him on CBS News one morning. He was homeless. He went from being homeless to being like one of the top radio stars in the country. Like, his voice was just amazing, and I just saw where he came from, and his come up was like a big inspiration to me. I forgot his name right now, but
Yeah, I saw the story. I don't remember the guy you're talking
Yeah.
about either.
yeah,
But I did see that story.
yeah, he's another one. I love Pat Summerall. Pat
Yeah.
Summerall is one. Keith Jackson from college
Yeah,
football.
Yeah. Oh, Nelly.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Of course, the late great John Madden.
Mm-hmm.
Al Michaels is another one. I like a lot of sportscasters because it was just something about how their voices, like their voices are just so significant with sports. Bob Costas is another one, and Bob Costas catches a lot of. During the Guardians playoff run last year, he caught a lot of shade from Cleveland fans, and I thought it was unnecessary. I'm like, he's just doing his job. He's not trying to, tear anybody down. But I'm a huge fan of Bob Costas.
Yeah, I am too. I was one of those fans. I put it like this. I didn't call in any shows, but at times when I was watching it, and I guess it's because of how involved I was with that series and how close the Guards came to beating the Yankees and going to the ALCS last year, that I thought that it was kind of slanted. But what do you think of Gus Johnson? A lot of people think that he's over the top. I love Gus Johnson. I love listening to him, especially when he's doing college football, especially when he's broadcasting Buckeyes.
I like Gus Johnson too. I really do like Gus Johnson. I don't know why people think he's over the top, but I'm like, no, I mean,
he brings excitement to the game,
right.
And ultimately, that's what you want in an announcer. You just don't want. I can see what's going on, so I don't need anybody just to report what's going on to me. I like somebody that's excited about what's going on the field. One of the reasons why I really like Tom Hamilton, that broadcasts the Guardians games. Some people don't like him, but I like him because even though obviously he wants the Guardians to win, I do also feel like he's fair in his broadcasting. So.
And I think that's the big thing. I understand. You're calling Guardians games and you're all for the Guardians, but you got to be biased too. Like that's how I felt watching.
Fair.
Right. Fair. Sorry about that. And I feel like you have to call it how you see it, because sometimes players don't play great and they don't have good games. I mean, you look at the Cavaliers last night in Atlanta, they didn't look good last night. And so you have to be straight down the middle and you have to be fair.
Exactly, and let me ask you this, and by the way, you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. We're talking sports broadcasting with our guest, Rico McGee. Rico, one thing that I will say, insults my intelligence as a fan, whether I'm watching a game on television or listening to it on the radio, is when announcers start making excuses for the team that they're covering. What is your take on that? Because I'll give you a prime example of this. You were speaking about the Cavs. A few weeks ago, actually maybe about a month ago, the Cavs played the Golden State Warriors here in Cleveland. It was the day after Golden State had played Boston on a Thursday night. That game had gone into overtime and Boston won. So the next night, the Warriors come to Cleveland, the second game of a back-to-back. They sit Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Andre Iguodala, and Andrew Wiggins. They sit all those players. So going into the game, you figure, well, the Cavs, Donovan Mitchell's not playing, but, the Cavs should win this game. And, of course, the Cavs not only lost, but they got blown out. It was embarrassing. And, well, I'll name the name. Brad Doherty was the color analyst. And he said, well, they didn't play well, but they didn't have Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, but the Warriors didn't have 4 future Hall of Famers that they didn't play that night. So that, as a fan, that just kind of really gets my goat, so to speak. What is your take on that, and why do you think broadcasters do that?
Well, one of the main reasons is a lot of athletes are sensitive, like we said before. So, I think a lot of athletes a lot of broadcasters, a lot of analysts, kind of want to watch what they say because they don't want to upset anybody or they don't want to, hurt anybody's feelings, quote unquote. But sometimes I'm with you. I think you have to call it, how it is. Now, granted, Golden State, they know how to develop their players, so their bench is pretty good, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that, but their bench is really good. But still, when you're sitting 4 future Hall of Famers, there is no excuse to go out there and not give the effort that you should have. And I feel like they didn't give the effort that night. And I do agree with you, but I understand, Brad, a lot of analysts are probably trying to avoid, conflict with a lot of these athletes nowadays. I'll give you one example. Shannon Sharp had said something a few years back about Adrian Peterson. I forgot what he said. He didn't said something along the lines that he didn't look good or he needs to play better. And Adrian Peterson tweeted, why are you, degrading black athletes, made this a whole thing about black people not sticking together. And Shannon Sharp said, I didn't attack you as a person. I just talked about your game. And that's all we're talking about.
Exactly.
All it is, we're just talking about your game. We're not attacking you as a person. We're not attacking what you stand for, nothing like that. All we're talking about is the game. So it's like, come on, you got to get out of your feelings and allow us to do our job without being verbally attacked for it.
Exactly, and I have a theory on that. Athletes need to develop a thicker skin. And the reason that I believe is that why so many of them are thin-skinned now is that athletes always, throughout the ages, always got accolades. They were the best player in their high school and the best player at their college. And so they got favors and benefits that the regular person didn't get. But to me, the difference between now and then, so to speak, whenever you want to draw that line between now and then, is that before, you didn't have all these guys playing together on AAU teams and developing these friendships and stuff. Now everybody's boys and what have you. Everybody's kiki and haw-hawing with each other before the game, slapping hands. And I'm not saying you got to be mortal and bitter enemies either. But, it's too much, it's too much friendly stuff going on now. So now, not only does that translate on the field, be it the baseball field, football field, or the court, basketball, even the hockey rink, I don't really follow it, hockey, that way to know that same phenomena exists there. So now, because they have this kind of thing going on with one another, they feel like they're almost above reproach, that nobody can criticize them.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, like professional sports, like football, college, even from little league to middle school to high school to college, you're used to, I think personally, you're used to being babied, you're used to getting what you want, you're used to being told, you're the best and all of this. And when you get to the professional level, the NFLs, the NBAs, MLBs, NHLs, soccer, whatever it is, they tell you something different. And now it's like, wait, hold on. And it's like, this is the pro level. This is the best of the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
There are high expectations out of you when you get drafted.
Exactly.
Especially if you get drafted a top 10 pick in the first round. So for me, it's like, I think just one of the issues is, being told everything and then somebody comes along and tells you different and now you're upset. And I think social media kind of plays a role in that too, because now people are just saying whatever.
Right,
without
you got a lot of people that's brave because they're on a keyboard.
Oh, exactly.
So let's just talk some sports and throw some topics out, and you and I can chop them up. So the NBA, along those same lines of what we're just talking, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant basically forced their way into Brooklyn, leaving ideal situations in the teams they were with. Kyrie Irving was with Boston with a young Jason Tatum, with a young Jaylen Brown. Team had gone to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2018. When they were young, they lost to the Cavaliers in 7 games. Kyrie did not even show up. He was injured, but he didn't even show up during the series, at least be on the bench to encourage his teammates and maybe give them some inside secrets on the Cavs. Okay. Fine, he left Cleveland because he didn't want to be in LeBron's shadow anymore. He goes to Boston, gets his own team, says he's going to sign on with them, his contract extension when it came time to do it. Of course, we know he didn't. Forced his way into Brooklyn. Then Kevin Durant on a team with those aforementioned Hall of Famers that we just talked about, and won 2 straight titles, would have won 3 in a row had he not got injured and Klay Thompson got injured against Toronto. Was the MVP of the finals in the 2 they won, was recognized as the best player on that team. In fact, they went out to recruit him and get him on that team because they knew they weren't going to win another championship unless they got him, is they wouldn't have beat LeBron's Cavaliers with him and Kyrie. So these two force them now. They got the ideal situation, so to speak. Then they bring James Harden on board. And yet, for some reason, that team never meshed, and those two were always unhappy. And talk about thin-skinned athletes, those two are the poster boys for that, in my opinion. And you couple that with the fact that they seem to be never to be happy wherever they are. And then now a lot of people are blaming Nets management on this as to what happened. But I don't see it that way. What's your take on what happened with them and the whole Brooklyn situation?
Well, the situation, they never played that. I don't even think they played 20 games together.
Yeah,
25
they won
games.
one playoff series in the time they were together.
Right, and even then, I don't even think they were all healthy at the same time.
No, they weren't. They weren't. That was the 2021 season when but to show you how crazy that was, though. They beat Boston in that first round. Then they went to play Milwaukee in the second round, and Kyrie Irving got injured in that series, and so did James Harden. They'll let James Harden play. Yet they were Kevin Durant from his toe being on the three-point line of advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals that year, where they probably would have got Irving back and Harden would have got healthier. They would have played Atlanta in the finals. Now, you don't know for a fact that they would have beat Atlanta, but the odds are they would have. That's how close they came to getting to the finals and possibly winning a title against Phoenix, and yet they didn't get there. And yet, like you said, it was the injuries, but also it seems as though like whatever the Nets did, they weren't happy. They got rid of the coach that was there before, so they didn't want him. Then Kyrie Irving said, we don't need a coach. Then they hired Steve Nash. They weren't happy with him. They got rid of Steve Nash. They got Jacques Vaughn. And for a stretch there in December and January, they were the best team in the league. KD goes down. Now all of a sudden Kyrie says, I want to be traded. And now neither one of them are there.
Well, it seems like it's always something with Kyrie. I mean, whether it be, we take it back to the bubble in 2021 when he was trying to stop players from playing. I didn't understand what the point of doing that was. I mean, you're basically telling these players, leave money on the table. I didn't agree with that. Then the thing about the anti-Semitic DVD or tape or whatever that was, and him refusing to, which as far as that goes, I can understand a little bit, but all of those things cost your team.
Right.
You're being paid. We've given you big money to come and win here, and it just seems like it's always something with you. So finally, Brooklyn says, I don't know about giving you that extension or giving you the max that you're asking for. What if something else comes up and
he's not reliable?
You're not reliable.
Exactly. So I'm not, and I can see it from their ownership standpoint. Why am I going to give you a 4-year max deal, given all the things you just said, given your track record, given the fact that after January 6th, you came to us and you said that you were so distraught about what happened that you can't play, and then your birthday came up, and then you decided, and I'm just going to go AWOL for my birthday and take 2 weeks off. Nobody knew where you were. So I was going to be interested to see what's going to happen with him at the end of this season, whether Mark Cuban is going to give him a max deal. And I don't know. I don't think he's not going to get the max deal. What I think is going to happen is he's going to want more years than what they're going to be willing to commit to. I don't think Dallas is going to commit to more than 2 years. And people are talking about, well, the Lakers are in play, but I don't see them, because if you look at it this way, LeBron has 2 years left on his contract. Do you really see the Lakers, to say for argument's sake, they do sign Kyrie Irving? Do you see them signing him more than for a 2-year contract, and that, especially them not knowing what the future status of LeBron is, and LeBron will be 40 years old in 2 years anyway.
Right. I just think, I think with Dallas it's a wait and see. Like, this is like half the season's over. Let's see what happens. Let's see how far we could get in the playoffs. and we'll go from there. That's what I think Dallas' whole mindset is. Now, I don't see him signing with the Lakers either. I just don't see him signing with the Lakers, especially with what you just said. I just don't see him going to LA. In the event, you don't know what's going to happen with LeBron. I just don't see him signing with LA. I didn't think he was ever going to sign with LA. I just don't think he wants to play with LeBron.
Yeah, he sends mixed messages, and so you never know about him. I think what the stickler is going to be, and we'll watch and see what happens at the end of the season. I don't think a team. Well, put it like this: if I'm an NBA owner, I'm not giving Kyrie Irving a 4-year guaranteed max contract because of his track record. I don't know when he's just going to decide that he's going to check out again for whatever reason, be it the vaccine, be it January 6th happened, be it, well, it's my birthday and I want to take a few weeks off, given the fact that, he hasn't had the best injury history in his career either. So I think Kyrie's going to get some now. I could be the one that's surprised, but I don't think anybody is going to give him a 4-year deal. I think he'll get a max deal, but it'll be 2 years with club options after that. That way he can opt out or the team can opt out. And it's just, is he going to sign that kind of contract or not? That remains to be seen. So with all the moves at the trade deadline that just took place in the NBA, who do you think are the two teams that are going to meet in the finals? Who's best positioned to meet each other in the finals?
I know everybody says Boston. Like, Boston is the favorite to come out of the East. Honestly, I think it's Milwaukee. People still sleep on Milwaukee. I tell people all the time, had Chris Middleton been healthy, they would have won last year. They would have beat Boston last year had Chris Middleton. Giannis is going to be Giannis. Giannis is going to do what he's going to do. Chris Middleton is the heart and soul of that team. He provides the spark when they need it. He is the fire up under the behind of Milwaukee. Had Chris Middleton been healthy last year, they probably would have went back last year.
Yep, I agree. I've been saying that on this show for the longest. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I got Milwaukee coming out of the East, and I think Phoenix is going to come out of the West. I think they've improved defensively. The regular season, unfortunately, nobody cares about the regular season at this point. It's really come playoff time. Well, they don't care about the first half of the season, let me say that.
Right, after the All-Star break.
Yeah, once the All-Star break is over, now you're trying to figure out your rotations, who's going to do what, this, that, and the third.
Jockeying for position.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be Milwaukee and Phoenix. I see a rematch.
Yeah, I can see that too. And to your point, everybody talks about how deep Boston is, and they are. They are. They've got a deep bench. They're bringing Williams off. They're bringing Derek White off. If Al Horford doesn't start, they're bringing him off the bench. They have a very deep bench. No question about it. But it's not like Milwaukee's bench is shallow either. They're bringing Jay Crowder. They got Bobby Portis. They've got Ingles that played for Utah. So they've got a deep bench as well. And if Giannis is healthy, because he bumped knees last night, and so they're saying he's day-to-day right now. But come playoff time, if Giannis is healthy, and like you said, if Chris Middleton is healthy, they've got the championship pedigree, they've got the deep bench, and no matter what series they play in the East, they're always going to have the best player on the floor. And normally, not always, because we know there's been upsets, but normally 99.9 times out of 100, when you have the best player on the floor, and the teams are evenly matched like Boston and Milwaukee are, then the team with the best player is going to win. I do think those two teams are going to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. Out West, I agree with you, but now that Phoenix picked up KD to go along with Booker and DeAndre Ayton, and also now Chris Paul can just strictly be a facilitator, I really don't see, although don't sleep on Denver. Nobody is giving Denver any credit. Oh, they're just a good regular season team. But Denver is really good. I mean, they got the 2-time MVP, and they play off of him so well. So, don't sleep on Denver, but I got I'm with you. I think it's going to be a rematch of Phoenix and Milwaukee, and that's going to be a great, great series.
Exactly. When you got Kevin Durant now and Milwaukee just being Milwaukee, I mean, that's going to be exciting.
Yes, it is. So where do you see the Cavs finishing this year? What do you think their ceiling is?
I think they'll make the playoffs this year. I do believe they'll make the playoffs.
Think they'll hold on to the 4th seed?
Yeah, I can't see them finishing no lower than the 4th this year. They, provided everybody stays healthy, because I think that's what hurt us last year. Everybody got injured after the All-Star break. We were knocked down to the play-in tournament, and I was a little sad. Because I wanted, but I think Cleveland can get out of the first round, depending on who the top seed is. I think Philly gives us a lot of trouble. And I don't think we'll see Philly in the playoffs.
No, they won't, because I got a follow-up question to ask you, but to your point, they won't see Philly unless the Cavs drop to 6, which we can talk about that in a minute too. But yeah, as it is now, if they were to play Brooklyn in the first round, or if the Knicks were to move up from the 6th seed to the 5th seed, I think Cleveland could beat either one of those two teams. And then in the second round, it looks like it's going to be Boston, although Milwaukee's only a half game behind Boston for the best record in the East. Strictly speaking, as a Cavs fan, I would rather them play Boston than Milwaukee. Not saying they can beat Boston, but they match up better with Boston than they do Milwaukee. So I would rather see them play Boston than Milwaukee. I think the Cavs' ceiling is to win one series, to hold on to the 4th seed, and to win one series and get eliminated in the second round. Their floor is to mess around and drop down to the play-in game. So, and along those lines, does it concern you any how they're having such difficulty closing out, number one, closing out games, because we saw that last year after the All-Star break, and number two, struggling against good teams. They beat the bums. They beat up on the bums, but they struggle against good teams, and you're obviously not going to see any bum teams in the playoffs.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I would much rather play Brooklyn in the first round of the playoffs than the Knicks, because the Knicks, I don't know what it is about the New York Knicks. We beat up on teams, but the Knicks have always, seems like the Knicks have given us a lot of trouble this season. Mm-hmm. And New York is, believe it or not, they could be a scary team heading into the playoffs.
Right.
Very scary heading into the playoffs. I tell people all the time, don't sleep on the New York Knicks.
Well, yeah, with Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, and then they picked up Josh Hart from Portland at the trade deadline. So, I'd like to see the Knicks stay in the 6th seed too. So
please, stay in the 6th seed.
Let them play Philly in the first round and battle that out.
Right.
But the thing that concerns me about the Cavs though is their propensity to fritter away games down the stretch. Like Thursday night against Brooklyn. Last night was just a joke. They didn't even show up. Like, they might as well just stay in Cleveland instead of even flying down to Atlanta yesterday. But made me think that as soon as they got to Atlanta, did they go to Magic City or what? But there's been a trend this year, especially against the good teams, is that the Cavs can have a lead midway through the 4th quarter and they can't put teams away. That's what happened the other night against Denver. It happened against Memphis earlier this year. Happened against the Knicks the last time they played. Those are just 3 games that come up onto the top of my head, and I'm sure there are others. So do you think this is a trend, or is this something that they're just learning how to do, and come playoff time they'll be able to have learned enough lessons that they can overcome that during the playoffs?
Well, you got to remember, the Cavs are still a young team, still learning, still trying to grow. So I'm not too concerned yet. If they're still doing this by the time playoff time comes around, then I would be a little, okay, what are y'all doing? Mm-hmm. Y'all tripping right now. Like, you realize you can't get away with this in the playoffs. And I think, honestly, Evan Mobley's probably going to be the key to that, to their success from now till from now through the playoffs, I think Evan Mobley is definitely going to be a key. He's improving. He is definitely improving, especially with his jump shot. I think he had 31 against Denver the other night.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be the big component for that. Now, as far as, just hold, defense, I'm hoping that I'm not too concerned at this point. Not to say that you shouldn't be concerned at all, because you don't want to lag, as March rolls around and teams start to catch fire and get better. The Cavaliers can easily find themselves falling from the 4th seed, probably down to the 8th or the 9th seed. That back to your point, you're once again back in the playoff.
Back in the play-in game, and if that's the case, even if they win the play-in game, to me, that's an unsuccessful season that you had to go to the play-in to get in. And to your point about Mobley, yes, over the last 15 games, Mobley's averaging 19.5 points a game and 8 rebounds a game. And ultimately, for the Cavs to get to where we all want them to be, and that is to be a championship contender again. They're not there yet, but Mobley has to be the best player on the team. Doesn't mean he has to be the leading scorer. He has to be the best player on the team. And I think, especially in crunch time, what the Cavs should do is that they should run more of their offense through Evan Mobley instead of Garland and Mitchell. Let them play off of the ball. Run the offense through Mobley. Let him catch it down on the low post. And he's a willing passer, and you can get a lot off of that. And the prime example of this was the other night. The mentioned game, he scored 31 points. He had 31 points at the end of the 3rd quarter. So the 4th quarter, he went scoreless because he did not get the ball. Now, who was that on? Is that on JB? Is that on the players? Is it on Evan himself? Well, his post-game interview, Evan Mobley said he wanted the ball. So JB has to draw up plays, and Mitchell and Garland have to get him the ball. Especially what just drove me crazy about that game Thursday is that Denver was in the penalty early in the 4th quarter. And instead of the Cavs, welcome to the right side, caller.
Don't
State
worry
your
about
name.
it, they hung up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Instead of the Cavs taking advantage of that, they shot from the perimeter and they lost the game. So I don't get it. Well, listen, we're running close to we got about maybe 6-7 minutes, and I'd love to talk NBA, but I want to hit something else with you while you're here. The Guardians are playing their first spring training game today. And the Guardians were a lot like last year's Cavs, except better because, they won a playoff series and took the big bad Yankees to the 5th game of the best-of-5 series before they fell to them and were not able to go to the American League Championship Series. So how do you see their season playing out this year?
I think they're bringing back everybody. I expect a little more. I really wish they would have beat the Yankees last year.
Yeah, so do I. For a lot of reasons.
A lot of reasons. Guardians fan, Cleveland, we can't stand the Yankees. I don't think anybody can. But honestly, I think they take it a step further this year. I think they're one of the best teams in the entire AL. And I think they could get past the Yankees. I think they'll get to the ALCS. I have them going to the ALCS next year. Now, depending on what happens with the Astros, well, time will tell. But I think they have the talent and they've got the pitching to definitely get to the ALCS.
And I'm going to do my baseball preview show the first Saturday in April. So I'm not going to say what I think. Well, I'll just put it like this. I don't disagree with you. I'll just put it like that. I believe the one thing that concerns me, or actually 2 things, is that last year, for the most part, they were injury-free. Jose Ramirez, we didn't know this, but Jose Ramirez played from June on with torn ligaments in his thumb, which really could have could have shut his season down, but he played through that. But they didn't suffer major injuries to any, of their frontline players. So you gotta hope that they repeat that. Although they are deep in their farm system, they've got a lot of depth there. The other thing too is that the White Sox on paper have as much, if not more talent than not only anybody in this division, but in baseball. The problem with the White Sox last year was that they underachieved. They didn't play well defensively. They had the kind of attitude like we're the White Sox, and so everybody should bow down to us. And they suffered a lot of injuries too. But they got a really good everyday lineup. They're pitching with Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito and one of the best pitchers in baseball, Dylan Cease. Now they do have an issue at the back of their bullpen with Liam Hendricks is dealing with cancer, so that's somebody you got to watch out for. And the other thing that the Guardians have to watch out for is the dreaded sophomore slump. Will the Stephen Kwans and the Oscar and Gonzalez's of the world go through the sophomore slump? I don't think they will, but those are things to be concerned about.
Also, pay attention to the Texas Rangers too, low key, because they just signed Jake DeGrom
right.
in off season. So a Jake DeGrom that's healthy, when he steps on that mound, woo!
Yeah, the problem is he hasn't been. And and I agree. The only issue about that is they're in the same division with the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners.
Right.
So it's going to be very difficult for them unless you're going to get two wild card teams out of the same division. It's going to be very difficult for them to overcome those. Houston is the best team in baseball right now. I don't think losing Justin Verlander is not going to hurt them at all. And they picked up Jose Abreu from the White Sox, so their lineup is going to be top shelf. I mean, they've got it all. So, and Seattle made additions as well to a team that made a run last year too. So I agree with you. Texas will be better, but will they be good enough to overtake those two remains to be seen.
Right.
So, well, we're getting towards the end of our hour. So how can people hear your podcast that you do?
Well, I drop an episode every day, so you can find us on YouTube at The Sports Minute Show with Rico McGee. That's The Sports Minute Show with Rico McGee. You can find us on YouTube. You can follow our TikTok at Sports Minute. You can find us on Facebook, The Sports Minute, 216 Sports Network. You can find us on YouTube, 216 Sports Network. And
welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Larry Jones, calling from Columbus, Ohio.
Well, yeah, Larry, so we're going to have you on in the second hour, so if you can bear with us for about another 10, 12 minutes or so, give us a call back at about maybe 8, 10 after 4, and we'll get you on in that second hour.
Okay, now, call back this number?
Yes, the 939-5087 number, yes.
Okay, call back in about 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay.
Yep, and that was foreshadowing, folks, because in the second hour, we're going to have former ABA and NBA player Larry Jones on with us in our second hour phone interview. So I'm sorry, you can go ahead and finish now. You were saying...
Oh, yeah, just The Sports Minute Show on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, put in The Sports Minute Show with Rico McGee, and you can also find 216 Sports Network on YouTube as well. That's 216 SPORTSNETWORK. You can find us on Facebook as well. Both shows on Facebook, The Sports Minute and 216 Sports Network. And you can find The Sports Minute on TikTok as well at The Sports Minute.
All right. Well, listen, Larry, thank you. Sorry,
Rico.
Thank you, Rico, so much for coming on today. Really enjoyed you and love to have you back sometime.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
We'll be back at you in the second hour with our guest, Larry Jones.
You need anything else from me?
Has violence affected your family? Violence can affect all parts of your lives, and sometimes in ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep, and cause you to lose focus, or angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services. You can break free into your seeking help. Give them a call at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They are free 24/7 and confidential. So look, if you want out and don't know where to start, please call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence started today. Call today, get the help you need today, 216-644-5487. Listen, they offer real help for real needs in real time. If you know a friend, if you know a family member, please, they are there to help. 216-644-5487, the Trauma Recovery Center in Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And finally, so listen, we are closing out on our last week of Black History Month, and I just want to read, a few notes on some of our great historians, and just a little note that someone put together, and, just to give you a little information about all of the people that I've read. I believe I read 2 lists, right, Jeff? Yeah, 2 lists of famous historians. So, a very humorous and revealing story is told about a group of white people who were fed up with African Americans. So they joined together, wishing themselves away. They passed through a deep, dark tunnel and emerged in sort of a twilight zone where there is an America without black people. At first, these white people breathed a sigh of relief. At last, they said, no more crime, drugs, violence, and welfare. All the blacks are gone. Then suddenly, reality set in. The new America is not America at all, only a barren land. See, there were very few crops that have flourished because the nation was built on a slave-supported system. There's no cities with tall skyscrapers because Alexander Miles, a black man who invented the elevator, and it doesn't exist. And without one, finds great difficulty in reaching higher floors. There are few, if any, cars because Richard Spikes, a black man, invented the automatic gear shift. Joseph Gamble, also a black man, invented the supercharged system for internal combustion engines. And Garrett Morgan, a black man, invented traffic signals. Furthermore, one could not use the rapid transit system because its procurer was the electric trolley, which was invented by another black man, Albert R. Robinson. Even if there were streets on which cars and the rapid transit system could operate, they were cluttered with paper because an African American, Charles Brooks, invented the street sweeper. There were few, if any, newspapers, magazines, or books because John Love, invented the pencil sharpener. Well, because they wanted us out. He's not here either. While William Purvis invented the fountain pen, Lynn Barrage invented the typewriter machine, and W.A. Love invented the advanced printing press. They were all, you guessed it, they were one of us. They were black, and guess what? They're not here either because they wanted us gone. And even if Americans could write letters, articles, books, they would have been transported by mail because William Berry invented the post-making and canceling machine. William Purvis also invented the hand stamp, and Philip Downing invented the letter drop. So, there's no life without us. I could go on and on. Soaps, soaps and lotions, forks and spoons and knives, beds and refrigerators, let the list go on. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, there's no life without us. we have just as much right to be here as everyone else. We have just as much right to be celebrated as everything and everyone else. Guess what? More than anything, we have just as much right to be respected in this world the same as everyone else. Happy Our History 365. And now back to Jeff Doggett in the right side.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you. I hope that all of you that listened this month were enlightened by the things that Decisive shared during these Black History moments throughout the month. And this is taught and reiterated, not just during the month of February, but this is something that we need to have and to know year round. There's a move within this country that if you're a regular listener to this show, you know that we've talked about it. There's a move within this country, especially in the states of Florida and Texas, but trust me, if we allow this to continue, it'll be coming to a state near you where the truth about Black history is being suppressed, is not being taught in the schools. For whatever the reason is and the agenda. We even heard basically, is Black history really necessary, or do we need to teach it? And one of the reasons that was given that it should be suppressed or that certain aspects of it should be left out is that they didn't want to, quote, make non-Black students feel guilty, unquote, or uncomfortable. Well, what about the feelings of the Black students who can't learn about their history or told that their history really is meaningless and doesn't have a lot of substance to it? What about their feelings? How about their self-esteem to be told that at a young age? And even to the point where you have people of color that are buying into this, that are being brainwashed like this to not to allow our history. And I do believe that we now have our guest on with us. Larry, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to No Static Radio, and we welcome to the right side, Larry Jones. Mr. Jones, for those of you who don't know, is a former professional basketball player, played in both the ABA, and then for those of you that were born after 1975 or so, you may not know what the ABA was, but the ABA was the American Basketball Association, and many future NBA stars came out of that league, like Julius the Dr. Irving, like George McGinnis, like Moses Malone, like Maurice Lucas, and others came out of that league. Just so you know, the three-point shot started in the ABA. The ABA was the first league to have the dunk contest at their All-Star game. So a lot of the things that you see as innovations today in the NBA originated in the ABA. And we have on with us here in our second hour, we have, as I said, former ABA and NBA player Larry Jones. Larry, welcome to No Static Radio and welcome to the right side.
Sir, I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my past experience. And you've been a great guy. So thank you for letting me be a part of your program today.
Well, we're so glad to have you on with us today. So you were the first player in the ABA to score 5,000 points. And how proud of you are you of that accomplishment? I'm sure that's something that a lot of people and people who fancy themselves as basketball aficionados don't know that. How proud of you are you of that accomplishment to be that first player to score 5,000 points in a league that featured some of the players that I mentioned just a moment ago?
It's probably a good feeling. I guess sometimes when you start to be the first, I mean, nobody else ever be the first, so it makes you feel good personally, really. And it was a blessing, and whatever I've accomplished in the game of basketball, associating with basketball, because I've been blessed, man. The Lord has really blessed me, and I just try to give myself, like I want to be on your program, to share some of my life experiences, to some of the things I've experienced over my life.
Right, and you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. And we have via phone interview former professional basketball player Larry Jones on with us. Larry, you played basketball at Columbus East High School in Columbus, Ohio. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played at East High School in Columbus South.
And
Yes, sir.
were some of your contemporaries when you played high school basketball? Some of your contemporaries were Nate Thurman and Gus Johnson, and I believe that Nate Thurman was a rival of yours in college as well, because he played at Bowling Green and you were at Toledo. So what was it like? Tell our audience that don't know about these guys, how good were those guys and what was it like playing against them?
Well, let's go back to Nate. Nate Thurman grew up in Akron, Ohio, and when I was in high school, we played against Akron Central. Now, I think now it's called Akron Central Howard now.
Right.
But I played against Nate in high school, and Nate was probably at that time, while he was maybe about 6'5", probably, and he somewhat played a wing. But on the team he played on, there was a guy by the name of Elijah Chapman. He was an all-state player. He was considered by far the best player on that team. He ended up making all-state in basketball. But the interesting thing, Elijah Chapman was offered a scholarship to Bowling Green, and he was going to accept it only if they brought Nate Thurman. And the rest of it is history with Nate, because Elijah Chapman didn't play a whole lot, but Nate went to be one of the best in the country as a player at Bowling Green. So it was really interesting when you look at his background. And if it wasn't for Elijah Chapman, probably, you never know, he might not have made it where he ended up making as one of the all-time great centers to play in the NBA.
Well, that's something that I didn't know about that, because I just know he had played at Akron Central Howard, or Akron Central is now Akron Central Howard, but I did not know that another player was integral in playing a part in him getting to BG, whereas he developed, as you said, into a great college player and a Hall of Fame NBA player. So,
but the other guy that you mentioned about Gus Johnson, he was a guy. I mean, most people, a lot of younger people, I'll say, that think he follow basketball, but realize Gus Johnson was one of the best players ever played the game out of Akron.
Yes, he was.
I think he ended up going to school maybe in Idaho or someplace west, but he ended up playing in the NBA for probably a dozen years. He was considered one of the best all-time power forwards to play the game of basketball, and he was out of Akron, Ohio.
Yes, he was. I was fortunate enough, and I guess I'm telling my age, but as a child, I was fortunate enough to see both Gus Johnson and Nate Thurman play. And something I want to ask you, because this is a debate that comes up a lot, at least in circles that I run in, is in Ohio basketball, and you've seen players play basketball in the state of Ohio since the 60s when you were playing until now. Who is the best basketball player that you've ever seen in the state of Ohio? They mentioned Nate, talk about Gus Johnson a little less than Nate Thurman, and then of course Clark Kellogg, who I got the chance to see as he played right here in Cleveland at St. Joe's, and then of course LeBron. So for the players that you got a chance to see, both the ones you played against and who were your contemporaries and ones that you've seen since then, who would you say was the best high school player that you saw in the state of Ohio? Besides Larry Jones, that is.
That would really have to be LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I look at LeBron, when you think about it, he was probably 18 years old coming out of high school, and he was a man among kids even back then when you look at his size and stuff. But as talented as that young person was, and all he did is accelerate in terms of his skill level. Probably the best player I've ever seen out of high school. I mean, and sometimes right now talk about the greatness of LeBron, and you talk about Kobe, you talk about MJ, you talk about Magic, and some of those guys, you got to look at the era they played in. But the title I give LeBron personally now, I think LeBron is the best athlete to ever play the game of basketball. Athletes. You know, when you get in a long discussion, when you start Kobe, MJ, and those other players, it's tough to measure because I just think the game is a lot different today than it was, say, 50 years ago. I mean, back 50 years ago, the game was a lot slower. Most guys that were 6'8", 6'9", played around the basket.
Right.
Today you got guys that 6'8", 6'9", you know, like Durant, those guys bringing the ball up the floor. Back in my day, if you look at Durant, it was close to 7 foot. They say, hey man, you better get underneath the basket.
Right.
But you got big guys that are quite talented today. You know, back in the day, you always wanted the little quick guy on your team. Now you got the big quick guy on your team. So it's a different time. The game is a lot faster now. I think back in the day when you're talking about up and down, I don't think you had as many. Boston was probably one of those teams that ran a lot, but to the most part, I don't think they played as much up and down. Plus, the other thing, the game was a lot physical back in the day.
Exactly.
I mean, today, if you touch a guy, it's a foul. But back then, I mean, guys beat one another up, man. You know, you see today, you watch guys drive to the basket, you know, maybe get an easy layup. Back then, they didn't look at hurting you, but you ain't gonna drive in and shoot layups on those big guys.
No,
They gonna make you feel.
No, you didn't. And Larry, it's so funny that you should bring that up because I was talking with a friend of mine this morning about that exact same thing, how the NBA of today has gone too far in the other extreme to me. Like, you know, I don't necessarily want it to be like it was, say, like back in the late 80s, early to mid 90s, when you had the 93, 89 games and you had a team like the Knicks with Anthony Mason and Anthony Bonner and Xavier McDaniel and Charles Oakley and them guys, and, you know, just beating up on people. And but then on the other hand, like, for example, last night, the Clippers and the Kings played a game in Sacramento that went to double overtime. The final score was 176 to 175. I don't want that either. So they got to find a happy medium somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's true, isn't it? But the game, I mean, for a lot of people, they're excited about seeing people score. You know, and I think, I mean, when I look at a lot of guys today, a lot of those guys are pretty talented, man, with ball handling and being able to go to the basket. And it's I think it's probably for a lot of people, I think they enjoy seeing a lot of scoring. I think it's like that, you know.
Well,
you know, sometimes when I look at guys talking about assists, and maybe I'm getting off track a little bit, but I just start thinking about guys, you know, you get triple doubles and all that kind of stuff. Back in the day, you know, when they were talking about Westbrook triple doubles, when he had a lot of assists and stuff. But back in the day, man, an assist was, in my early years, was a direct pass to guys shooting a layup, not a 15-foot jump shot. I mean, you throw the ball to guys, you might shoot a 30-foot jump shot, and it's an assist. But back in the day, you know, when Oscar Robertson, the big O, was playing, it wasn't you know, he had a triple-double, but it was a direct pass for a layup, not a jump shot.
Right. Now, you played college ball at the University of Toledo. What would you say was your greatest accomplishment when you played college ball at Toledo?
You know, probably, I don't know, just for me, when I look at college, for me, when I went away to school, my game plan was to go to school, keep my nose clean, graduate, come back and help my mom and dad. So for me, I'm the greatest accomplishment was to graduate from college.
Okay.
And I enjoyed basketball, so my main accomplishment in college was to graduate. You know, it's like, when you start to run, do you want to finish? And I wanted to finish that thing. That would be, if someone said the greatest thing I got out of going to college was to finish.
And then too, when you were in college, it wasn't like one and done and all that stuff like it is now. And so that, you know, was a accomplishment to do that. I'm just curious, share with our audience what it was like because the 60s were a very tumultuous time in our country with the civil rights movement, and then that morphed into the Black Power movement in the later part of the 60s. But as a black athlete Toledo's not a minor university, it's not a big major university, it's not a small university either. What was it like as a black athlete for you during that period of time in our country?
And then when I was up in Toledo this week with some guys I went to school with, but I never saw any racial issues at Toledo when I was there. And I would imagine, I don't remember how many students they had at the university, but I doubt if there were 100 kids of color going there when I went there. And probably about half of the people of color that was attending there were athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But I never had any bad experiences in Toledo. But what did happen, I know when I was playing basketball, we went down to play Marshall, which was in Huntington, West Virginia. And it was just me, it was only 2 African Americans on the basketball team there. I remember the coach giving us some money to go down to the snack bar and get milkshakes and stuff. And there were 12 guys. So the 12 of us went down there. They fixed 10 milkshakes for there and 2 to go.
Mm.
And really, that was really the first time I felt racial issues. Because when I look back as a kid, I lived in the hood. Everybody around us, sometimes you were poor, but everybody around you had the same thing you had, so you didn't know any different. I mean, everybody was at the same level.
Right.
It was not like we're traveling to the more affluent community like Schaefer Heights or places like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we just stayed in the community, so we all felt like we were the same thing. But the other part about, I also played baseball in college, but when we went south to play baseball, that's when I really saw some issues in terms of being set aside, people talking to you out of the side of the neck in terms of calling you black, hit the nigger in the head, all those kinds of things. Because I remember we stopped someplace in Kentucky on a Sunday, went to church as a team. Now, I was only African American on the baseball team, okay? So we go to this church, we walk out of church to the restaurant, which is across the street. The first thing when we walked in, said we don't serve colored people in here. Mm-hmm. Now we end up playing baseball in Tennessee, and I can remember playing against, especially at Vanderbilt. I mean, they were, like I said, I was a good player now. I mean, it was talking about, I'm hearing them say, hit the nigger in the head, calling you all kinds of names. And I had never experienced any of that stuff. I never had. Even when you went to places on the way down, there were some places they tell you, niggers can't drink water from here, you got to go to the other way. But I had never, up here, I had never experienced any of that. I really never did. But it was different. But also, I don't know if you know this, but even back in the NBA, in early years, there were some places in St. Louis that blacks could stay, and they were on a basketball team, professional basketball team back then.
Yeah, Bill Russell talked about that. You're absolutely correct. So, Larry, let me ask you this. When the Lakers drafted you in 1963, was the reason that you decided to stay at University of Toledo, what you just said a couple minutes ago, is that you wanted to get your degree?
That was the key thing. I mean, that's always, pretty much, another thing, what I found interesting, because I think back to coming out of high school, and I don't remember, like, a counselor saying you need to go to college and all that stuff. I mean, it really, but there was something in my mind. I think I had a cousin who went to college, okay? And I think that might have been my drive, because it's not like people were telling you to go to college and stuff like that. But I think it was just something I felt like I wanted to do. And then when I went away to school, but like I was telling you, one thing I want to do is finish school and come back home, get a job, and help my mother, to be honest. Because my mother and father were divorced, and coming up as a kid, I had an abusive dad. It was raggy in that household, really. And I realized my mother was doing day work, ironing people's clothes and stuff like that. So it was always, and as some people would say, I was like a mama's boy. And I was proud to be mama's boy kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted my mom to be proud of me, not necessarily playing pro ball. to just doing the right thing and being a good kid. I mean, that was my life, really.
You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We have by phone interview former professional basketball player, both of the ABA and NBA, Larry Jones, on the line with us. Larry, so you went back to Toledo, and then you got eventually you got drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. But then with the Sixers, you wound up playing in the Eastern League. Now, I have to admit that until I talked to you the other day, and I fancy myself as a basketball aficionado, but even I have to admit I had never heard of the Eastern League before until you told me about it the other day. So enlighten our listeners. Number one, what was the Eastern League? What was it? And what was the quality of play? Because you surprised me with some of the players that you said played in that league. So what was the Eastern League, and what was the quality of play like in that league?
Well, the Eastern League was a semi-pro basketball league, and you basically played on weekends, which would probably be Saturday and Sunday. I mean, back then when I came out of school, I think there were only 9 NBA teams when I came out of school. And I think there were 11 guys, 11 players on the team. So you told me it was only talking about maybe 100 guys, playing pro basketball. So the Eastern League was a semi-pro league back then. Now, early on now, some guys went over to Europe to play, but a lot of guys played in the Eastern League. You played on the weekend, okay? And a lot of those guys had jobs. So the Eastern League could have been paying you, and most of those teams were were probably in Pennsylvania and then more east. New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, most of where all those teams were. So guys that might have tried out for pro teams, which was a limited number, end up playing in the semi-pro basketball league. And in that league, there were guys. I mean, there were so many good guys playing in that league. It was amazing. Because when I look back, with some of those guys, I mean, some high-profile guys you might remember, like Bob Love played in the Eastern League.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby White played in the NBA, was a guard. You had Paul Silas played in the Eastern League. A lot of guys played there, and then they eventually went up to got an opportunity to play in the NBA. But that was the only out for a lot of guys, and a lot of them guys I'm talking about were great players.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Bob Love's in the Hall of Fame, if I'm correct.
Right. And Silas is one. I mean,
it's another one.
Several championship teams with Boston.
Mm-hmm. Was LeBron's first coach in the NBA.
Yeah, but it was in it, and when the ABA started, you'd be amazed at the numbers of guys that came out of the Eastern League, which is a semi-pro league. There were probably maybe about 8 teams in the Eastern League. But there were probably about 15, 20 guys came out of the Eastern League to play in the ABA. But a lot of guys didn't want to do that because at that time, you could have, for instance, I look at myself, I had a job also and was playing on the Eastern League, so I was probably making, and I said guys were making anywhere from maybe $50 to $250 a game. So I had a job and playing on the Eastern League. I was trying making $400 or $500 a week working and playing on the Eastern League. But if you went to the NBA back then, there were guys making $5,000. So if you had a decent job, do you want to do that? So and like I said, about 15 to 20 guys left the Eastern League to play in the ABA. And some of them excelled quite well. And I feel like it was a blessing for me.
And you just said something, and I got another question to ask you, but you just said something that I really want this to resonate with our listening audience here, and that's this. You said that you played in the Eastern League, and there were guys playing in the NBA at that time as well that were playing, but then they also had jobs in the off season. So, today, for today's fan, that's a concept that they can't really grasp right now, given the salaries that players make in the NBA now that basically that's their job. But that was true not only of just the NBA, but that was just true of professional sports, period. I remember here in Cleveland when I was growing up, John Wooten that played for the Browns worked in an insurance company in the off season, and other players did the same thing. So just want that to resonate with our audience there.
When I came out of school, just to give you an example, when I came out of school, I signed for $7,000, okay? The number one player out of college that year, number one draft player, was a guy by the name of Lucius Jackson. He came out of Pan American. I was drafted by the Sixers. He was the number one draft pick by the Sixers. He signed for $13,000 and got a grand free, which was probably worth maybe $3,000 back then. Like I said, there were guys making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a season. Not just in, like you said, not just in basketball, football, baseball. When the season was over, those guys, we part of it, had to go get a job. I came back from the year I played. First year, I came back home. My father worked at Labs' department store, and he also had a part-time job working for the gas company. When I came home, my father got me a job working with him. My father worked 2 jobs now. My father made more money than I did. When I go out and talk to people, groups of people, and to talk about my testimony, when I talk, most people, especially younger people, saying, "You must be a millionaire. How many cars you got? Do you live in a mansion?" Then I got to tell them, for instance, the minimum salary now in the NBA is just a little less than $1 million. Okay, when I came out of school, $1 million would have probably paid all the players in the NBA. The minimum now would have probably paid everybody. I doubt when I came out of school, if anybody was making over $50,000. I doubt that.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, salaries then and now you can't even compare. So in the Eastern League, you mentioned there were some great, but you mentioned Bob Love, you mentioned Bob Weiss. Who were some of these other great players that came out of the Eastern League that you said went into the ABA? Because I want to talk transition into your ABA time. But who were some of these great players that were in the Eastern League that you said came out and went into the ABA that many of our audience know and probably didn't know that they did play in the Eastern League?
But those off the top, man. Those are the guys that really stood out.
Okay.
But there was different. There was a guy named Willie Summerside. He came out of Duquesne. Laverne Tartt back in it came out of Bradley. But they were a lot of these guys became all-stars in the ABA. And I used to look when the ABA first started. I used to look at some of the teams that weren't real talented. I used to say some of those teams in the Eastern League would have waxed them playing against them.
Right. And so
here's an now this I'm going back on you now. You're a year or two younger than me. I'll say that. I'll give you a little break. But anyhow, this is interesting. I played for the Wilkes-Barre Bears in the Eastern League. Okay. There was a guy named Larry Costello who also coached in the NBA for several years.
Yeah, coached the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Larry Costello retired from the 76ers. He came and played in the Eastern League. The team I played on, I was a starting guard, and Laverne Tartt, who came out of Bradley, was the starting. Costello come to the team I was on. He came off the bench. He wasn't that good a player at that time, right? The next year, he goes back and plays with the Sixers. And he wasn't playing much in the Eastern League. But he goes right back and plays with the Sixers. So and the idea, for instance, Laverne Tartt, like I said, we played together in the backcourt, and he ended up playing in the ABA, and he was one of the guys who was an all-star player too. But the ABA, when I look at the ABA, it provided a lot of opportunities for guys, man. would not have gotten the opportunity. Then I looked at some of the guys that played in the ABA, they ended up coaching in the NBA.
They sure
I mean,
did.
you look at
Billy
like
Cunningham.
Larry Brown, Doug Moe. There was one of the guys coached I can't remember his name, was a coach for Portland. The other guy was the coach one time with the Pacers. But a lot of guys came out of that league. And I might be rambling a little bit, but I gotta go where I gotta use my head because I'll forget.
Well, Billy Cunningham played in the ABA too, and he was an NBA coach.
This is interesting. Billy Cunningham left the NBA, played in the ABA because he ended up playing with Carolina. They gave him maybe one of the French. I think Hardy's franchise was starting to grow back in. They gave him a couple franchises, I think. He was just another player in the ABA. Him and I don't know if you remember Joe Caldwell.
Yes.
Another guy was just a player. The other guy that came in that league that played well now, was one of all-time greats, was Rick Barry. Now Rick Barry played extremely well. Because Rick played in the ABA too.
Didn't he play with the Oakland Oaks in the ABA, or was he in with another team?
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of the ABA, so you started your career in Denver in the ABA.
Yeah.
And you.
Okay, let me tell you how I got there.
Yes.
Okay. The last year I played in the Eastern League, the ABA was getting ready to start up the year. So I wrote a letter to every team in the ABA, and I asked if you would pay for me to come for a tryout. Okay. And the only thing responded to paying for it was Denver. Also that summer, I got a call from the Lakers, and they wanted me to come out there and try out. So what I did, this is early summer, I go to LA, I'm trying out at the camp in the summertime, and I'm killing them out there. And the facility that we were practicing in, I had a phone call come in from Denver to tell me don't sign with the Lakers, because I was killing them at the camp. So when I leave LA, I get a check, a $3,000 check as a bonus to sign, and also a contract for $10,000. I come back home, and I get a call, and I go out to Denver, doing the same thing. Denver gives me the same numbers. It's amazing. They give me a check for $3,000 a bonus to sign, and they give me a contract for $10 grand. So now it's getting around early part of September. Like I said, I'm a mama's boy. I already told you that. So meantime, I'm asking my mom, which one should I go to? And she's not helping me, man. And I'm getting upset because she is my biggest fan, man. I'm waiting for her to tell me to go this way, that way. So anyhow, I get in my car and I'm going 70 west. You get to St. Louis, I think, you take 70 to go to Denver, or you take 66 to LA. And I said to myself, I don't do well going to my left, I'm gonna go left. And that's how I ended up in Denver.
Wow. That's just by deciding it that way. And so you played in Denver, you started your ABA career in Denver. And
played in Denver, and I was an all-star player. And back then, I think in Denver, I made more money off the court than on the court in Denver because I did some stuff, some Schlitz beer. Never had a drink. I would go to bars. They had a little profile sheet with my picture on it, my accomplishments and stuff like that. I made more money off the court than on the court in Denver. But I played there, made all the first team, and led the team in scoring and all that kind of stuff. But then later on, while being there, it wasn't a selfish thing. I thought we should have a union. Okay, so what I did, I sent inquiries out to all the players in the league about would they be interested in starting a players association. So I got called into the office by the general manager, and he said that the guy on me said you're trying to start a union, the league is too much in the infancy stage, and I don't want you to stop, and on and on and on. And then he basically, do you like playing in Denver? And as we talked, he's saying to me, if it don't be for the league, he said, talking to me basically that, you be working in track or someplace. I put my hand up like a stop sign. I said, now you might say that to some guy, but not with me. I said, now, first of all, I didn't just walk through school. I stopped, and at that time, I had a master's degree in guidance and counseling. And I was working on a PhD. I said, now you can say that to somebody, but not to me.
Right.
So basically, he said to me, you need to stop. And so I said, okay, and I left. Then later on, I got called back in and chewed out on that about still doing what I was doing, and eventually they ended up getting trained, and it really, I think, I look at it a little differently now because what happened, I was an all-star player, scorer, big, I was a star kind of guy.
Exactly.
So anyhow, when my contract was up in that league, nobody would sign me. Nobody. Now, they put you on waivers, and now at a certain point, my skills started to decline, but I was a ton better than most of the guys still playing. So, and I'm trying to figure out, I can't believe on waivers that nobody tried to sign me. So now I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do now, because I still got some basketball in me, right? So I'm looking at the teams. I looked at all the teams in the NBA, the records, and where the guards were the weakest. Because I'm smart enough. I'm not going to go somewhere where you stack big time at guard.
Right.
So what I looked at, what was really interesting, I looked at the 76ers. This is where I started. The year before, I think they only won 8, 9, 10 games. I think.
Yeah, they went 9 and 73.
Okay. So then I said, oh, that's the ideal spot. So anyhow, I go there. When I get there, and that was Doug Collins' first year, and they had another guy named Alan Brisker.
Yeah, I remember
who
him.
played at Virginia Tech maybe, but anyhow, he was the second. So they had 2 picks, and they had another guy by the name of Raymond Lewis. And at some point, you might want to follow this kid up. He played at Los Angeles City College, and he probably led the nation in scoring. And they never was able to bring him in. So anyhow, when I get there, I'm looking around this room, man. They got like about 20 guards, 15 forwards, and about 10 centers. And I'm saying to myself, you gotta be kidding me. I'm looking at all these guys, and I'm saying if they're looking to rebuild, this is gonna be a tough haul for me, really. So about a week or two into the practice, they called us and some of the guys in and said, if you guys got something else to do, you guys should just leave, because basically we're saying your chances of making is like slim to none. So I said to myself, I'm gonna hang in here and work this one out, and if I get cut, I just come on back home in Columbus to get a job. So during the exhibition season, we was playing some ABA teams, and back then the NBA hadn't adopted the 3-point thing, so we playing an ABA teams. I'm scoring, dropping threes. So when the exhibition season was over, I led the team in scoring.
Oh, so the NBA and hold that thought for 1 second, Lee. So then the NBA and ABA play each other in the preseason games before the merger. Then I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So anyhow, when it came down to cutting guys down to the limit, I think at that time it was 12 players, and I didn't get cut, but I was considered the last. I was the last guy on the team, the 12th guy. But at that point in my life, I'm okay being the 12th guy. I got a job.
Right.
So when the season, and I was a scorer. I mean, there were a couple of teams I played when I was in the ABA. There were a couple of seasons I might have led the team in assists. But if somebody said, well, you're a real good ball handler, I'd have to say no. But if you said, well, you're a real good shooter, I'd have to say yeah. But anyhow, my ball handling skills was adequate, but I would say that, I wasn't the ideal point guard, that's for sure. So when the season started, I'm the 12th guy on the bench. Again, I'm happy, got a job. The point guard and the guard, do you remember Freddie Carter?
Yes.
Fred Carter was
Fred Mad Dog Carter. Yeah, Mad Dog Carter.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the other guy was a guy by the name of Freddie Boyd, who played at Oregon.
Larry? Did we use you? Larry? I think we lost him. Okay. Hope you call back, Larry, because I want to hear the end of this story. For those of you that are listening, I don't know you, but it's fascinating to hear him tell these stories about the ABA days and transitioning into the NBA. I don't know, Maurice, if we can get him back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's some things I want to ask. So you all heard that. So there was a time when professional athletes had to have other jobs other than besides their profession in order to make ends meet. I know that's a concept that seems like it's foreign to most of you that are listening to us today, given the astronomical salaries in all professional sports now. But that was a time, and I remember those days. I remember local athletes here in the Cleveland area, as I told Larry when we had him on the line, how John Wooten had an insurance agency, and Ernie Green, that played for the Cleveland Browns, also worked in the private sector. I don't quite remember what it was he did. Paul Warfield opened up a Goodyear store in my neighborhood after his rookie season, and that experience will always stand out to me. He opened up a Goodyear store on the corner of Glendale and Lee. There's a beauty supply store there now, but Paul Warfield opened a Goodyear tire store there in 1965, and the thing that stands out about that to me is that as a 9-year-old, almost 9, hadn't turned 9 yet actually, when he opened the store, the grand opening, Jim Brown and John Wooten were at the grand opening for this Goodyear store, and myself and other kids in the neighborhood went up to the store, and we got to meet Jim Brown in person. And you talk about, as a child, being awestruck, being in the presence of somebody that was a sports hero to me. So and that's just that's how it was for a long time. It wasn't really until the 70s actually when you started to see players making enough money where they didn't have to work jobs in the off season to supplement their income, so that they can continue to get by. And we're talking about big time star players too. It's not just talking about the average everyday players. We're talking about big time, big name players had to get jobs in the off season in order to to augment their income. Were we able to get him back yet or no?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. So if you all have any questions or comments, or if you want to comment on what you heard, you can give us a call at 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. We're hoping that we can get Larry Jones back on the line before we go off the air today. But yeah, that's exactly how it was. And I wanted to ask him and hopefully we'll get him back on the line, because there were several NBA stars that got their beginning in the ABA, and Mr. Jones played against some of these guys. He played against Julius Erving and George McGinnis, and a lot of you don't know, but Julius Erving was the marquee name in the ABA at that time. His exploits, that you have to understand, is that there was no cable back then, so there was no ESPN or Fox Sports or any of the many sports networks that we have. And the NBA had exclusive rights with ABC to show their games and their games only. So the ABA games were not televised. And you kept hearing about this guy, Julius Erving, Dr. J, and how fantastic he was and some of his exploits, but of course we never saw that. And so the ABA, what they did to put him in a more visible market in hopes of landing a television contract where the ABA could have their games televised, which means more money, which, as the ABA was always hurting for money. Julius Erving began his ABA career with a team called the Virginia Squires, all right? And there was an agreement made between the Virginia Squires and the Commissioner's Office of the ABA to move Julius Erving to the New York Nets. They were New York Nets at that time, weren't the Brooklyn Nets, or were not the New Jersey Nets as they were when they came into the NBA. They were the New York Nets, to bring him into that New York market to get more exposure to the league. And, you know, the Nets with Julius Erving and Larry Keenan, Dr. J and Dr. K, played in that New York market and brought exposure to the to the ABA. But eventually, the ABA was not able to stay together financially, and they merged with the NBA. Now, there were only 4 ABA teams that were brought into the NBA at the time of the merger, and they're still in the league now. It's the San Antonio Spurs, the New York Nets, which became the Brooklyn Nets. Well, became the New Jersey Nets, and then became the Brooklyn Nets. The Indiana Pacers was the other team that came from the ABA, and the Denver Nuggets. So those 4 teams merged with the NBA. The ABA then folded, and there was a draft lottery basically to draft players from the ABA to come and play into the NBA. And, you know, there's something that I know Larry would have wanted to ask him about and get his thoughts on when we had him on the air, that players like Maurice Lucas and Moses Malone, as you know, we mentioned Julius Erving, Larry Keenan, Dan Issel, all of these guys, George McGinnis, all of these, George Gervin, all of these guys were players that were in the ABA and came to the NBA. David Thompson, all came to the NBA from the ABA and greatly enhanced and made the game that you see today. And as we said in the beginning of the conversation with Larry, that some of the rules that you see in the NBA today actually came out of the old ABA. It was the ABA that had the three-point line. It wasn't the NBA that did not have it. As a matter of fact, the NBA did not adopt the three-point line until, I believe it was the 79-80 season, was the first year that so it wasn't too long after the merger that they adopted the three-point line. The ABA was the first one who had the slam dunk contest at their All-Star game that was made famous by Julius the Dr. Erving when he in the slam dunk contest that was held in Denver too, that All-Star game held in Denver of all places where Larry Jones began his career. That was where you see if you've seen the highlight clip of Dr. J taking off from the foul line and dunking, that was the first time that was ever done. So the ABA had a lot of firsts in it. They played with the red, white, and blue ball, and as we said, they had great players in that league that went on to become great players in the NBA as well. And had the ABA got a television contract, who knows what would have happened. It was very similar to what happened in professional football when the AFL and the NFL merged. The only difference, well, there's a huge difference, is that the AFL had a television contract with NBC Sports. And so when those two leagues merged, the NFL took in all the AFL teams. There were no teams that had to fold like what happened with the ABA. You know, the ABA had teams in St. Louis, the St. Louis Spirits, they had the Dallas Chaparrals, they had the San Diego Conquistadors, they had the teams like the Memphis Tams, as I mentioned, the Virginia Squires, they had the Kentucky Colonels. Those were just some of the teams that they had. The Floridians that played in Miami was another team. So they had the Oakland Oaks that played in the Bay Area that Rick Barry played for, another NBA great that got his start in the ABA. So though all those teams had to fold and those players came to the NBA, but they proved that product was not inferior because there was a narrative, of course, that the product was inferior, and that's why they couldn't play. So I'm glad. Looks like we're not going to be able to get Larry back before we end the show today, but I'm glad he was able to come on and share some of his ABA experiences with us, as well as with the Eastern League, which I didn't know about until I talked to him prior to him coming on the show today. And the Eastern League produced some great players too, like Bob Butterbean Love, who's in the Hall of Fame, Bob Weiss, who both of those guys wound up playing with the Chicago Bulls of the mid to late 60s and early 70s, with Norm Van Leer and Jerry Sloan were on those teams as well. So there you have it. So we are coming to the end of our show today, and as we do always, we want to give you our hero and our zero of the week. Our hero of the week is actually a collective. Our hero of the week is the nation of the Ukraine, who I don't know if you want to call it a celebration. I'm not going to call it a celebration, but the 1 year anniversary of Russia invading Ukraine, and when it happened, many thought that Russia was going to crush Ukraine, that Russia would be in Kiev rather, in about a week or so, and that President Zelensky and his family were either going to have to flee, seek asylum and flee, or if they stayed, would be killed by the Russians. Well, here we are a year later. Ukraine is still a sovereign nation. They're winning the land war against Russia. And they're standing up in the face of the bully, in the face of the aggressor, in the face of Russian imperialism, in the face of a murderous, gangsterous, vile, evil war criminal like Vladimir Putin.
But they hate us.
And giving it back to them. So this week, our hero for the week is Ukraine, the people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian military. Our zero of the week is the flip side of that, is Vladimir Putin, who started this war of aggression, who started this war of imperialism, who has committed war crimes beyond measure that we've seen in this last year, who has his forces deliberately rocket nuclear plants and electrical plants and apartment buildings and civilian targets in an attempt to intimidate and terrorize the people of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin, you are our zero of the week. We want to once again thank our guests today that we were able to have with us on the right side today. Our guest in the second hour, of course, former professional basketball player Larry Jones. We want to thank him. Sorry that we lost him. And then, of course, in the first hour rather, we want to thank our guest, Mr. McGee, that we had in the first hour. And we want to most of all thank you all for listening, for watching us via Facebook or YouTube, however you're watching us. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. And until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Right Side with your host, Jeff Doggett, here on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure don't bring the noise on staticradio.net. First and foremost, we just want to apologize for the station interruption. We work hard to make sure that you have a wonderful listening experience, and so we will continue to do so. Please accept our most sincere apologies as we work to always serve our listening and viewing public so much better. And with that being said, make sure you check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter at No Static_Radio, on Instagram at TheReal_No Static Radio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, you guys, make sure you check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Just make sure you type in No Static. Just make sure you type in No Static Radio for replays of this show and all others on the platform. And for an uninterrupted listening experience, that means no refreshing the page. Just sit back and wait for a little buffering, maybe even a commercial, and boom, you got us. Make sure you check us out on TuneIn.com, LiveOnlineRadio.net, and Media Q for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform, and for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and a look at all our great show hosts here. Please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you so much again, and once again, our most sincere apologies for any interruption for today. And you know what it is. Listen, we've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your Voice of the Revolution. NoStaticRadio.net, powered by Google, part of the Colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines of Cleveland Rugby League and Designing exclusively. You guys be safe, be well, stay warm, and we'll catch you during the week. We're here 6 days a week. We broadcast 24/7, so make sure you tune in and stick around. We've always got something for you. Be safe and peace.